And welcome to the Barry Foster Show on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. I'd like to remind you that if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, just put them in the comments below. You know, people you'd like us to talk to, subjects you'd like us to talk about. Always glad to do that. Always glad to hear from the folks who are tuned in. Don't forget, check this page every weekday. We're going to try to have a new program up each and every weekday. Over 100 programs now, working towards 5,000 views as we start a little slow, but are picking up steam. Please subscribe and like our YouTube page. That would help a lot. And join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. That would be very helpful. In the studios, John Larsen this morning.
Good morning, sir.
Now, this is recorded on a Monday, and will be broadcast on Tuesday. And on Tuesday night, we'll be doing a live version of the Barry Foster Show as part of an open house at the Highlands Tea Party. So we'll be taking comments. Last time we did just about a month ago. Javita McKinney carried the microphone around for us, and those were our callers. And we had a really good give and take, and I'm hoping for even a better session this time. We have lots of books and pamphlets to give away. They were bequeathed to us, and John has been keeping them in the rolling storage area, also known in his car.
As they say, there's no room in the inn. I mean, yeah. I don't have any room at the house.
So we'll be happy to give those to you if you want to show up. And I think it's going to be very important to have this kind of material, in as much as we are now going to step into the place of filling Charlie Kirk's shoes, and it will take literally thousands of us to do it. And part and parcel of it's going to be us being informed about the issues, about Christianity, about the Republic, and these books will help you do just exactly
Yeah, there's
that.
A lot of it because when Dale Flug was back, now 4, 5, 6 years ago, and he was teaching constitutional classes at his house, and there was maybe about a dozen of us that went to that. Mm-hmm. And so Dale had acquired all these books and pamphlets and, if you will, to distribute for that group of people and others, and so on. And now that he's relocating to a new place,
retired,
right, and so on, and has no room to speak of for storing these kind of things any longer, he gave them to us to distribute at the Tea Party and elsewhere. So that's what we're going to do.
And we hope that you will read them, take notes, and give them to a friend, because we need, I think, in many instances, to explain how the Republic works, not only to children and young people who may not have been well educated on this subject, but new arrivals who don't understand the idea of freedom and the Republic and the rights and responsibilities you have as an American. And I know you probably want to talk a little bit about this. Sandra and I, on Monday, talked about watching the Charlie Kirk Memorial, the life and legacy of Charlie Kirk out there in Glendale, Arizona at the State Farm Stadium. And it was incredible. As we said, they filled it to capacity, more than 80,000 people in the stadium. And then outside there were another 200,000 people. And millions have watched it online and will watch it online. They think 500 million will watch. I think it'll be more than that.
I was watching Glenn Beck before I left this morning, and he was there. Mm-hmm. He was one of those sitting on the ground floor. However, he didn't have a VIP, escort in. He said he arrived there. He drove there from the airport, I guess. He arrived there at about 8:30 in the line of cars trying to get in. And he said the line was unbelievable. But he said what really kind of shook him was there were more people coming out than were going in. And he said what I found out was there was no more room, so they told people, look, from this spot back, there's no room for you inside. So there's the other building that's a ways away, but it's going to hold like 20,000. So all those people were leaving the main venue, State Farm Stadium, if you will, and started going towards this other location, and so on.
The overflow.
But he said it was amazing. He said when he got in there, and I guess he was in the lower section, but it wasn't like a VIP thing. which is kind of amazing to me for someone like Glenn Beck. But anyhow, he said, I sat down next to a person I'd never seen before, never met, and he said we struck up an amazing conversation and sat there and talked, during the whole performance, he said. But he said, just the fact that that many people were there, well over 100,000 people. Mm-hmm. And he said then well over, I don't know how many millions of people were listening on the web, watching on TV, whatever, and so on. So I didn't notice, because I was hooked up on YouTube, so I didn't notice, whether or not local. I know Newsmax covered it, Fox covered it, whether the big three, if you will, or the rest of them covered it, I have no idea.
Well, I'll tell you that we started, I went and opened up a new account for myself on Rumble. We watched it until it froze up on Rumble, then I quit and went over to Right Side Broadcasting, watched the rest of it there. I watched the president's entire remarks off CBS. They put that up there because we wanted to watch the entire thing, and it took us about 6 hours because we started at 1 o'clock our time, which was 11 o'clock Arizona time. And no, it was 2 o'clock, excuse me. We logged in about 1:30 to get ready, and so we watched it all the way up until around 5:30 or 5:40 when we had to get ready to go to church, because we have church at 6 o'clock at night. It's kind of a drive-in. So I let Sandra drive, and I was listening and still taking notes. Mm-hmm. And when we came out, President Trump was still speaking. And so I got the very end of that, and then I went home and I watched the end of Erica Kirk's remarks and the beginning of Donald Trump's remarks. So it took about 6 hours for us to watch this, but I thought it was important. One of our friends had said that they were watching it and they were crying the whole time, and who can blame them? But one guy said, well, I'm watching from Africa. So there were literally people from around the world, and people who now, Right Side Broadcasting has it chopped up into the segments of the speakers. It's not in one long timeline.
Well, I'll tell you, again, his wife, Erica Kirk, proved what an absolutely strong lady she is. Mm-hmm. It was just unbelievable, and her making the announcement at that time that she forgave the killer she's way stronger than I would be in
Amen.
That situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that, and Glenn talked about this a lot this morning. He said that it may be well and good to forgive somebody spiritually, but he said they still have to be held accountable legally.
Yes.
And he said forgiving someone for what they did is not the same as letting them off the hook, so to speak, for what they did.
Well, if you remember the story of the prodigal son, which was a parable, which means it's a totally made-up story, Jesus made up this story to illustrate a point, okay? And in it, the prodigal son takes his inheritance and goes and squanders it in a faraway land. Mm-hmm. When he comes back, he doesn't get more inheritance. He says, you can come back, you're my son, you can still live here. And the older brother comes and he's, what's up with this? And he says, look, your inheritance is yours. There's nothing, you're going to get all this. He's not getting anything. So even though the prodigal son returns and they kill the fatted calf and have a big party for his friends, he squandered his inheritance. It's gone. He now has to take the responsibility for that. And I posted this several places. A is for accountability, because now that this is over, now I think that these Queers with Guns, which is the organization that he supposedly was affiliated with, and they have, the last I heard, they cited more than 20 people that they believe in some way, shape, and form were responsible for this. I think it's going to be time for us to hold all these people accountable. The mainstream media for the drumbeat of calling people fascists and Nazis and justifying violence against them. I think you're right. I think the accountability is now going to come.
Well, it's got to. I mean, you can't have such a hope, and on live television, no less, an assassination where the proof is ironclad. Mm-hmm. And his own confession to his so-called girlfriend, all right, his confession to her via a tweet or email, whatever way he sent it, all right, just says that this is really an open and shut case as far as conviction goes, as far as I'm concerned. And the governor of Utah has already said that they have the death penalty. And he's been charged, and the death penalty is on the table.
I am waiting, because had this been some right-wing nut job going after a leftist or a Democrat proponent of some description, the media would be all over dissecting the groups that he was with, where they are, doxing them, and they haven't talked any about this. So I understand now that we want to mourn Charlie Kirk. We want to emulate what he did. We want to begin to try to do the same kinds of things that he was doing. And we talked on Monday about the kernel, lest it dies, it doesn't go to seed and make more seeds. He's made millions of seeds. You've seen the We Are Charlie Kirk, and that's all fine, because it's up to us now to spread this word and to let people who didn't know anything about him begin to know things about him. And I think in many instances that's what the memorial did. It let people know who he was. And the point, this is the turning point, was repeated over and over and over again for America, even for Western civilization, and the spreading of the gospel of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That being said, it's time for us to unpack how that kid got to where he got, who he was listening to, what they were espousing. And one thing that's really not been really well advertised was we heard that right after it happened, they got the guy. He was some old guy. Turned out he didn't do it. And now he said, and at least I've seen it quoted that he said that he claimed to have done it to give the killer a chance to escape.
Well, not only that, I think they have found out now that although he may not have been involved in what happened, he was guilty of some other crime. So he did have
obstruction of justice.
Yeah, he did have another issue that he's going to have to legally deal with, and so on. But the amazing part of it is that I think Charlie Kirk had a way, and I watched so many of his college things. It was amazing, and I look forward to them because I just said, Charlie, you're going to have another group where you're going to prove them all wrong.
Yes.
Because they're going to come up there filled with what they believe is Albert Einstein knowledge, and he puts them in their place almost immediately because they say something, number one, it's not true, number two, they can't back it up, and so on. So he was very good at that, but he didn't do it in a demeaning way. He didn't try to throw it in their face and say, look, you're ignorant, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about. No, he actually said, I heard what you said, but here's the truth. And he would spell out the truth to them, whether it was a biblical situation or a political situation or a historical situation. So he was very good at that.
Well, he had one student who was, he was trying to tell them that the leftists really have all the millionaires, and the kid wouldn't believe him. And so he went through, Jeff Bezos, George Soros, Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, he went down the line. He says, these are all billionaires. He says, other than Elon Musk, name me one. And the kid couldn't, and somebody shouts out from the audience, Thiel. And he goes, well, that's one, and he's having a really hard time. He says, well, I don't see them here on the campus trying to promote leftist or liberal ideas. He says, well, the whole campus promotes leftist and liberal ideas.
Yeah, I think, and I know Trump has said things here in the last couple of weeks about George Soros. Man, oh my gosh, I hope they take him to
the cleaners?
The mat, because I think he and two or three other major organizations are at the root of all of this insanity that's being spread about on colleges, high schools, and even in grade schools today, and so on. So there has got to be free speech is fine, but at some point when it becomes incendiary, you have to say, look, time out. This is what's causing all of these young people to have these radical ideas and feel like, oh, that's an enemy of ours, so you have a right to go out and do away with them. Because kids have this fixation now. If they hear this, you look at it, and a few years ago when I finally realized the brainwashing that was being done, you start out kids, let's say, in even higher elementary school than in high school, and the teachers are anti-whatever. Just throw it at the kids constantly. and then they go to college and they get another 4 or 5 years of it. So they've had 10 years of this indoctrination. And some people that cannot separate truth from fiction take that in and believe, well, look at all my teachers, all my professors have told me that this group is bad or this person is bad, so something needs to be done. And I have the wherewithal to do it, so I think I'm going to go do it.
As the twig is bent, so grows the tree, and that's what this kid supposedly said. I have a chance to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. You know, he went and he thought he was going to be this great hero, and instead, I think that you have now disciples of Charlie Kirk and more than 60,000 requests for chapter beginnings. I'm hoping they start one here, and I will do everything in my power to help facilitate that. But the one thing about Charlie, he said things they don't like. He proved them wrong, which they couldn't hardly stand.
No.
But it was in the free marketplace of ideas, and his one of his great mantras was, we have to have dialogue, because when dialogue goes away, that's when the Civil War, that's when the problems start. He says we have to talk to each other. And he would continue to, and it's going to be our job to try to talk to people who don't necessarily agree with us, you know, and say, you know, I know you're probably not on board with this, but this is the way and you will find, if you're not already our age, the older you get, the smarter your parents are going to get. You know, and I talked to a young man about that just the other day. He says, it's been astonishing to me how much smarter my dad has gotten as I've gotten older. And you're going to find out that as you get older, you're going to find out that your parents were smart, and if you listen to them now, you won't have to worry about making mistakes you're going to make if you don't listen to them.
Yeah, that's how you're brought up. However, you know, it appears from what we've seen and heard so far that...
Man, they're close today. Did they move the tracks?
I think so.
Good gravy.
But I think that, you know, what we've seen and heard for so long, that the family, his family, was evidently an altogether what you call an American family.
A nuclear family.
It appears
Yes.
that way.
Yes.
It appears that way. However, his own mother said that within the last couple of years, he really started going to the dark side. He really became more apolitical and so on. So obviously, something in the last few years got to him and made him begin thinking about doing the things that he ultimately
He was
did.
on the web. He was on the internet,
Yeah,
and he
the
was
dark web.
He was on the dark web, and he was
Right.
being fed this information. And you really have to fact check this stuff. I mean, I continue. I have a guy that chases me around all the time, and I just don't have really time to fight with him. But you know, at some point I'm going to say, don't you want to have meaningful dialogue on this? Because if we don't, I see a revival coming. I see a revival on numerous levels. The first revival I see is a religious revival, a church revival. In fact, Donald Trump said that you have to bring God back into the country, and I think that's exactly right. And people have to understand the separation of church and state. That phrase, the wall of separation between church and state, was in a private letter from Jefferson, okay, to another citizen. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration of Independence. It's not anyplace else. You know, they were worried that there was going to be one religious group to make this into a theocracy, the way that we see in the Middle East. That Islam runs the countries, and so we need to bring the morals and provisions of Christianity back into the government. I see a political upheaval too, because people are now understanding that there are politicians who want to put American first. Are they conservatives? Well, maybe not. I don't think Trump's a conservative for all intents and purposes, but he loves America, and he wants to see the American institutions reinstituted. And this is the time now to make those things happen. You pointed out earlier about kids who have been indoctrinated in elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and now the twig has been bent. We're going to have to get in there and take these little twigs and show them about the revolution, show them about who Washington was, and Madison was, and Jefferson was, and John Adams, and even some of the John Jay, some of the lesser known patriots who helped make this country into what it is today. And it's going to be up to us to give. In fact, we're recording this on a Monday. Today is Nathan Hale Day. Today is the day that Nathan Hale was hanged by the British for being a spy.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other part of the whole thing, and that is, I think Charlie Kirk's message was one of education. I think he went out trying to educate young people with what was truth and fiction, all right? And so he did that when they came up and made some, unbelievable statement about something because it was something they were fed to, I believe, by their college professor and whatnot. And then Charlie just literally explained to them in black and white by, names, dates, times, whatever, what the truth was. There was nothing much they could say. They stood there in disbelief with what they heard, but he proved them to be wrong. And I think that was he brought a lot of disciples to his side once he got started. Because when he first went out, I listened to this a little bit on one of the podcasts yesterday. When he first started going out to college, he was lucky to get like 100 people in the beginning. He would get like maybe 100 students that would come out and listen to it. But then as more and more students started to hear this message, and he started to go further and further out into the college life area, if you will, he started drawing in hundreds and then thousands of people, and it was nothing for him to get 2,000 or 3,000 students, and that at his college performances.
Yeah, his first appearance was at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is probably one of the bluest places you can possibly go.
Yes.
He plopped down his little 10 by 10 tent with a table, and he said, "Big government sucks. Prove me wrong." And that's where he started. And what happened, I think, is that as he went out and as they began to put his exchanges on the internet and video them and then put them into clips and put them on the internet, as kids thought, well, I'm going to get a chance to be viral on the internet. They started putting together gotcha questions, and he was very, very wise in being able to unpack questions, and he was also interested in. He generally wanted to talk to people, and find out what did you know, and if they had. And I've had this same instance where I thought people had wrong information. We've had some spirited back and forth. And he did that with young people. And as he began to do this, people who already agreed with him began to gravitate toward him. And one of the things, and I'm going to watch very closely now, one of the things that they did was they wouldn't let him on some campuses.
Oh, yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, what we've heard here within the last week, because Megyn Kelly talked about it, and Rudy Giuliani talked about it. I heard them both on her podcast and on his. He was on, I think, Newsmax, but Fox News really blackballed Charlie Kirk.
Oh, really?
For the last couple of years, yes, sir. And Megyn Kelly, because she used to be at Fox News for a long time, knew the insides of what went on, and she absolutely said yes, positively. And then Rudy Giuliani, like he said, Fox didn't even invite me to speak this year at the 9/11 Memorial. He said, every year prior to this, they've always called me and asked me if I would speak at the 9/11 Memorial celebration. And he said, this year, no call.
Hey, the media has shifted to the left very much.
Well, and I think the other part is the people that now run Fox News.
Yes.
You got Paul Ryan, you got Karl Rove, okay, you got the younger, what's the name of the family that owns Fox News?
Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, his sons now are running it. So you've got all of those anti-Trump people against it, and so that's why they probably blackballed Charlie Kirk. But I mean, just how petty is that when you think about it? How petty is it?
Okay? And it begs a shift away from the mainstream media.
Oh, yes.
To One American News, to Newsmax, to podcasts, and I've seen another young man who's wading out now into trying to do what Charlie Kirk has done. At the time he started, people would have said he was a quote-unquote Charlie Kirk wannabe. I don't think that I wouldn't tag anybody with that idea. What I would tag him with is he is going to try to be a force multiplier. He's going to amplify what Charlie did, and if you find that he is in line with the scriptures, okay, if he's in line with the Constitution, then those who are not against us are for us. I'm hoping, please drop in the comments below if you know of other young people. One we saw just yesterday at the Charlie Kirk Memorial was Benny Johnson, who has been doing this. He's a little more vociferous.
Yes.
He uses language I don't think that Charlie would have used.
No.
And he's a little more bombastic, but still he's in that same route, that same wheelhouse. I'm hoping to find more, and please let us know who they are.
I'll tell you, I heard a young guy, and I would guess maybe he's in his very early 20s, speaking last week, and I'd seen him a couple times before. I think he's the head of, like, I want to call it the Young Republicans on a national scene, not a local scene, the national scene. Very well spoken, seems to be very knowledgeable. Now he doesn't talk about his biblical side of it, so I don't know what his experience is there. But I mean, as far as being able to talk articulately about the political world, he's pretty good. Now, whether or not he has ambitions, I have no idea, but there's another person. And I assume there are going to be other people, even within maybe the Turning Point USA organization. He's got 300 employees.
Erica had said, and she didn't say it during his eulogy, but she said that Charlie was good at grooming people to get them to come and to take his place. And I think his idea was, I can't be everywhere all at the same time.
Right.
And he did so many things. He did a national podcast. Okay, he did a national podcast. He did college campus appearances. He did appearances before large groups and gave speeches. I mean, he was as much as he was all over everywhere. He couldn't be everywhere. Right. So now he has been grooming people, and I'm hoping to find some people in his mold who want to come and speak with the Tea Party, who want to be on this podcast that we can elevate to helping them, because the message is always the same.
Well, they're going to have to maintain the visibility. You got to stay out in front of the public. Mm-hmm. Okay, in any organization, but this one specifically, like Charlie was, they've got to have people that almost immediately are prepared to go out and speak for Turning Point USA, including his wife. Now, whether she's going to do, if you will, college campus situation like
she said that would continue.
Well, and if she's
whether
going
it's
to
her
do,
or not, I'm not sure.
That's it. So I mean that, and I would hope that you don't want to say this because it looks like we're bowing down to what happened, but you've got to be more protective of whoever that person may be.
Well,
whether it's indoor or even if they decide to do it outdoor, you've got to have better protection, and you've got to have better scrutiny of who's there.
Well, we heard Mikey McCoy yesterday. They brought several members of his staff up. Mm-hmm. The first, and then they brought some more. Yep. Justin Streifer, who was the chief operating officer for Turning Point USA, and he was the one that said, courage does not require any talent. Courage does not require any ability. Courage is just saying yes to doing this and repeating the idea that this is our turning point. But she said the college campus, and I think college campuses would be ill-advised now to Turning Point down. They have an advantage, and they need to leverage it.
Well, and the other thing I would like to see them do, and whether it's whoever the spokesperson becomes, the visibility part of it, or it's someone else, but start doing these type of things on high school campuses.
Absolutely.
You've got to go, everybody says this today, we've got to reach the younger people. Okay, you're reaching 18 to 22-year-olds in college. You got to get down and reach the 10 and 12-year-olds in high school. You've got to get to them early before they become totally indoctrinated. So I would hope they would do that.
Yeah, at one point, and I'll float this idea out again. During the summertime, many churches have vacation Bible schools. Mm-hmm. And at the vacation Bible school, they take some portion of the Bible and center their lessons around this. Some parables by Jesus, or what happened to Moses, or ways of instructing young people in the stories and the provisions of the Bible during their 5-day. Our church had a thing called the 5-day club, and they did it there. I would like to see a vacation patriot school put together where during the summertime, and a lot of parents they don't know what to do with the kids, send them to the vacation patriot school. And for kids who are very young, let them color pictures of the Liberty Bell or George Washington, Let them color pictures of the flag and instruct them what the stars and the stripes are for, just very rudimentary things. And as it goes on, tell them stories about the Revolution, tell them stories about how freedom works, how the Constitution works, how the Declaration works. And for that 1 week, and I believe that there are at least some churches, and there may be some clubs, groups, and organizations that have buildings like a Rotary building, a Kiwanis building, an Oddfellows building, whatever even the Vietnam Veterans Hall, that you could rent for a week to have the kids in. You give them the instruction, you take care of them, you give them snacks, and you send them home. And it's going to be up to us to do those kinds of things to instruct, as you say, the youth, because I think on many cases we've seen these pitched battles about teachers who are having pride flags instead of American flags, for crying out loud.
Well, you saw in some of the firings or, dismissals that happened because of people that made these unbelievably rude and crude statements about Charlie Kirk's passing were teachers, professors, nurses, doctors, even a guy in the Marine Corps. He was I don't know what his rank was, but in the Marine Corps. And he got let go by Pete Hegseth. But the other part to this that really begins to bother me, because I've been watching more and more of it, we're being taken over in this country by the Muslims.
Amen.
We are, absolutely. If you don't believe it, just look around. Dearborn, Michigan has a Muslim mayor, all right? Last week, he decided to rename a couple of his main streets in Dearborn after Muslim whoever. This person from Citizen
yes.
came forward at one of the city hall meetings and said, do you know that one of these people, all right, that you have designated to name the street after is a anti-American? He's made all kinds of inflammatory statements and so on, threatening statements. And the mayor essentially said to him, if you don't like it here, get out. He said, we'll have a celebration when you're gone. That was his answer. If you take a look at what's going on in Minnesota, they now, and in Dearborn, all right, they have the call to arms, if you will, 5 days, 5 times a day, the Muslim siren goes off and they can pray. In New York City, they do the same thing. And a lot of times they do it in a main street in New York City. In Minnesota, they're doing the same thing. So this is spreading. And if we don't wake up to the fact that that's happening, all right, then we're going to be in serious trouble. I believe I saw last week one of the congressmen, I believe he's a Republican, has tried to reinstall a law, or try to get a law come forward for a vote, and that is that Muslims, that we had this, all right, it was not, they say it wasn't, but there was a law put in place in 1952 that had something to do with about Muslims being allowed in politics and federal politics. And I think if we don't face this, if you see what's going on in Europe, especially England today, they are totally consumed by the Muslims of the world in their country.
And the pushback is coming in all of those countries, and we're seeing it. And again, I think this tinder, in forestry, they call it ground fuel. And because there's all this ground fuel that's now been ignited by Charlie Kirk's, I will call it an execution, okay? Because of that, the pendulum is swinging back the other way. I think there's a couple of things that, and I'm going to suggest it to our representative. I'll see if it gains any traction, and then we're going to find, if you are listening anywhere across the fruited plain, I would hope you suggest to your representative 2 things. Number one is that they institute a law and codify it that you have to be born in the United States to be a congressman, senator, representative, whatever, that you have to be American born. Okay, number one, you cannot be foreign born. You have to be American. It's good enough for the president. It's good enough for the rest. And there was an act that was taken out, the Smith-Munt Act, that was taken out under Obama, they changed it. They called it, and it was part of, I think it was part of Obamacare. I may be wrong about that, but it was part of a giant bill, and it was called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. And in that act, before, the FBI, the CIA, government agencies were not allowed to propagandize to American citizens. They could do it abroad all they wanted to. They could do it in England, Africa, Asia, wherever. They could do it there, but they couldn't do it to Americans. And under the Obama administration, that was changed to where they could propagandize Americans, and that needs to be put back the way that it was, and to begin transparency in our government.
Well, it appears like Donald Trump now has started to focus on a number of things outside of, the illegals crossing the border and so on and so forth. And I think that, he has either realized or others have brought it to him, but beginning to realize the number of anti-American forces that are against this country surviving and going forward. Mm-hmm. So I think he's begun to say, okay, look, we've got to take a look at the George Soroses of the world, the Tides Foundation, and 2 or 3 other major funders of this. U.S. aid, when you start looking at it, so much money was funneled off the U.S. aid to go to these NGOs. It's just amazing.
NGO being a non-governmental organization.
Right. And so that has been in place now for quite a while, and it's all these things are against America surviving. So you've got to really go after the bad guys, and whatever criminal element that they crossed over on, if that's what it takes to get them taken care of, put away, arrested, charged, whatever the circumstances are, we have got to start doing that. We used to have McCarthyism in this country, okay, when McCarthy went after the communists. Well, guess what? We're at the same place right now. It's a combination of the communists and the Muslims that are trying to consume this country.
Because they both want the same thing.
They both want the same thing. So it behooves us, whether you call it isolationism or not, I don't care. The survival of the country is going to be the end result. And if we don't recognize that fact and start dealing with it, we're going to have many, many bigger problems going forward.
Well, under Doge, when they began to take money away from the U.S. aid, that was their cash cow. That's where they were getting their money for the billions of dollars. And people would say, well, where's our money going? Where's it going? Can't they take care of it? And we found out where it was going. And it was there were giant money laundering operations all throughout the United States and all throughout the government. And they began to undo that. And now that their money is drying up, that's where some of the problem is coming. And so you're right. And we need to, again, as we pointed out at the beginning of the program, this is going to be part and parcel of the accountability. And I just want to say this right now, all right? If some of the worst people that I can think of were to be killed in an assassination, somebody like a George Soros, for instance, or something, I would not be celebrating, okay? In fact, you would be kind of mourning the fact that he did not find the Lord and Savior before he died. We don't want anybody to burn. We don't want anybody to burn. I can't find it almost incomprehensible to anyone who puts any value on human life whatsoever to celebrate that kind of thing. And some of these people, especially I saw some of these kids with the purple hair and the multiple piercings, and they were so happy and that they had no concept of the value of human life, and you feel about as bad for them as you can, because these are the people you need to reach out. And somebody was talking about this the kid that shot Charlie Kirk. The one thing he needs is to be witnessed to. You need to find some of these people and just witness to them. And you're finding some of the fence sitters now have opened the Bible for the first time. Mm-hmm. Are coming to church for the first time. And we had new people in church in our service. Many people came over and said hi. Now, they were people our age, all right? They didn't have, their hairs were not, well, they weren't colored green or red or purple or anything, but they might have been, she might have had some work done, I don't know. But at any rate, we all came over and welcomed them in. And I think it's time as Christians that we need to spread the gospel and if you feel uneasy about spreading the gospel, drop me a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. We'll get you in touch with someone who can help you. But we need to look at these people the way that Christ would look at them. And we're all sinners. All of us Christians are sinners saved by grace. People may sin in a different way than we do, okay, or we did, or we do. But that doesn't mean that we're particularly any better. So it's going to be up to us to look at the Christian underpinnings of this and then go and say, you need to understand that we should kiss the ground that we're walking on. This is the best country on the face of the earth. And one of Charlie Kirk's taglines was, I got to go, let's get to work, we got a country to save. You know, and that was another one of his mantras, that we have a country to save. And John, I think you and I and all these other podcasts that we watch and listen to have the same idea. We have a country to save.
Yep. And there are two things that were kind of on the, if you will, the good side from what I saw yesterday, and kind of a little bit of humor. That is the getting together of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. I know it was visual, and I know they shook hands and all that, but I'm hoping that now all of the heat of the moment stuff that was said 6 months ago or whatever is past, and the two of them can, go forward together. I really believe that Musk I think this really, because let's face it, Musk is also very visual and very public. And I think this gave him pause to think, that could have been me.
Yes.
That could have been me. And I think that, not that changes, I don't know what.
I think it does
I don't know
change.
what he thinks, but it does. But I was glad to see the two of them come together at that celebration yesterday. And then the other thing was when his wife was talking, and she said, I saw that Charlie had one gray hair, but I didn't tell him that.
Yes.
Because
I'm sorry, baby.
I didn't want him to know.
Yes. Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of humorous.
Yeah, she was. She shared a lot, and I talked about this with Sandra yesterday. But I saw a video where they were doing a podcast together, and they were taking questions from their audience, and somebody said, "Who's more conservative, Charlie or Erica?" And without a moment's hesitation, he was Erica. She is. She is. And she is more. And he said, did having children make you more conservative? And she said, yes. Okay? So, again, I think that they didn't pick her because she was his wife. They picked her because she has now a blazing desire to make this happen. And she is as smart, or maybe smarter than Charlie. Okay? I will tell you right now, I have said this, my wife just shakes her head when I say it, but I'll say it again. She's smarter than I'll ever be, okay? And so you have someone leading this, and it's going to be up to us to somehow get behind this movement. Wherever you are within the sound of my voice, I would tell you to look on your social media, find out, is there a turning point in my area? Is there one being formed in my area? How can we help? Can we give you some money to have a place to meet? Can we buy you some snacks? Can we put a sign in our yard? Can we come and just be part and parcel of putting this organization together? I would like to see one started here in Highlands County. I've heard rumblings about getting one started. I've had several people contact me. Yes, I would like to get a turning point started here, not only for the kids that are going to South Florida State College, okay? But young people of that age, all the way down into high school. And now we've seen in the past trying to get the high schools to cooperate, and trying to get the school board or at least the superintendent to cooperate with that kind of a thing has been a tough sell.
Well,
it's been a very tough sell.
I mean, this, as I said many times yesterday during that performance and show, that now is the time. I mean,
yes.
The old saying, strike when the iron's hot. The iron is very hot right now. And now don't let this time slip away, because if you have the impetus to make something happen, now is the time to do it. And I think a lot of young people who have been witness to what took place the last 10, 11 days are in a position and in a desire to say, if I'd like to join that organization. I want to become part of that.
We have a friend who knew Charlie Kirk back in Chicago before his good buddy there, Mickey McCoy, got him to move out to Arizona. All right, they were in Chicago, and she knew him when he was back in Chicago and was just first getting started, and had only had a handful of Turning Point organizations, and she still knows people in that organization. And I have asked her, can she either come on herself and talk to us about this, or can she get us someone from Turning Point USA? And she's working, and I'm sure they've got tens of thousands of requests.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I'm trying to get somebody to come and phone in to be on this program.
Well, there's no doubt that you're right. They probably got 10,000 requests for speakers or somebody to come and speak. I mean, I would like to invite somebody from the organization to even do a Zoom cast to the Tea Party and so on. But you're right, you would probably be on a list of maybe 10,000 other folks. Yeah. But you have to start somewhere. And I believe that they recognize that in order to keep the thing going, it has to crank up almost immediately. You can't let time slip away, because, the old saying is that, when something happens, if there's nothing to follow that, then the excitement and all of that starts to dwindle and so on. So I'm hoping that they go forward and start immediately.
There's a quote by Søren Kierkegaard, which was quoted yesterday, and I'm going to try to get it right. It's going to be in the right ballpark here. He said, "When a tyrant dies, his reign is over. When a martyr dies, his reign begins." And Sunday, the ceremony that they had out there in Glendale at State Farm Stadium was kind of it wasn't closure for the people. It was the beginning of getting things started. And for instance, if there's somebody who wants to set up a Turning Point pop-up on the campus of South Florida State College and to begin signing people up to get names, addresses, phone numbers, people who want to be part of a Turning Point organization, I will help do that. I will help facilitate that. I'll give the first number of a place to do that. If it's a little short notice, because this is going to be broadcast on Tuesday, and tonight, on this Tuesday night, we're going to have an open house at the Highlands Tea Party with books. John and I are going to do a live version of this podcast, and if you want to come there and help to get things signed up, please come there. If there's other places you want to go and places you want to do this kind of things, let us know, and we will help facilitate that we will help. John, you're right. Now is the time. The pendulum is beginning to swing back the other way, and I think I heard Victor Davis Hanson, he called it a collective shrug, and when you shrug your shoulders, it's like you don't care. What he meant was they're pushing off, they're shrugging it off, that they're not putting up with a leftist balderdash anymore, that people are standing up saying, no, we're not going to stand for this anymore, and we've heard them calling for unity, which means forgive us and let us get away with it.
Right.
And again, let's get back to A is for accountability, because number one, I think what needs to be done, and I'm hoping beginning today, and I haven't watched any podcast, I listened to a little bit of talk radio, but I haven't heard any podcasts. I do want to find out who is beginning to get into these organizations. I want to know where they are. They probably stripped their sites down and taken all this stuff away. But there are people who follow this stuff and take screenshots. I want to find out who are these people, what kind of investigations being done. Do we have the names of the 20 or more people that they suspect in this? It's time to unravel what caused this to happen.
Well, the other thing that I think we've begun to understand more about, not an awful lot at this point, but a little bit, and that is there are some very, very bad, seriously bad organizations that are running around this country whose goal is to do away with people that they don't like. And they're part of and part of it is, they say the transgender movement.
Yes.
All right. There are armed parts of that organization now. There are armed parts of other organizations that are out there. I saw some film clips this weekend of them. And so there are some bad actors out there that actually want to do just that. They want to do away with leadership or people that are not speaking the things that they want to hear and want the public to hear.
And it's time for them to be, and I'll use this word exactly, disarmed. It's time for them to be dismantled. It's time for them to have their teeth pulled as an organization so that they cannot cause these kinds of harm. We've seen how they prey on people who have some kind of dysphoria. They don't know what sex they are. They don't even know whether they're humans. They have these kids who think they're cats and raccoons and dogs and Lord only knows what else.
Yeah, what do they call them? Furry people?
Yeah, furry people.
Yeah, furry people.
And these are people who've been fed drugs, as part of this changeover that are having horrible problems, and they are fertile ground for people to take advantage of them and get them to do things which are to us unthinkable.
Well, I know that RFK Jr. has taken on an awful lot, and he's fighting the battles. He had a lot of serious rounds of investigative hearings that he went through the last week or so and whatnot. And today I know he and Trump are going to make a big announcement about autism, which the president hinted about that yesterday. But also I think that, and if he isn't already, I'm sure that RFK and his organization is investigating the downside of all these transgender drugs that these kids take to have these sex changes, because it's obvious now with some of the most recent shootings that we've had that are caused by transgender people or that have gone under the change. They've been injected with drugs. They've maybe had, surgical procedures done. Something is affecting their mind. All right, something is saying to them that I need to lash out. And certainly now that the voice has been silenced of Charlie Kirk, the devil, if you will, is sitting there saying, now's my time to go after people. Now's my time to get my hands around them and convince them to do bad things. So we've got to be aware that all of these things are out there, and you need to be concerned about, some of the people that are walking the street today.
Well, I think in counter to that, I think that also now is the time for us as Christians to begin to hold out to the light, because the light always defeats the darkness. When one has a light, you don't hide it under a bushel. You put it up on the mantle so it lights the entire room. And we saw. I have never heard politicians speak the word of Christ and speak the word of the gospel more than I heard Sunday.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
we saw Donald Trump Jr. go 15 minutes and not utter an epithet, which I thought was an amazing amount of restraint.
And he quoted a couple biblical passages too.
Yes.
By the way.
Yeah. So I will tell you that it is. I think now is the time for us to be of good courage. As I talked last Friday with Pastor Goodwin, do not be afraid is in the Bible 365 times, one for each day of the year. Okay, and so now it's time to us to begin to reach out to some of these people. Not only kids, a lot of it's kids, and I get that. But it's time to reach out to people with the gospel of America, with the gospel, well, in this order, with the gospel of Jesus Christ and the gospel of America, and to begin to talk to these young people, to engage the folks that we think disagree with us, to have the kind of dialogue that Charlie Kirk would have had, and to begin the turning point now, because I think that they're on the run. So now is the time to pursue them.
Well, the bully pulpit is got the largest mic of anybody in the country.
Yes.
And I think the president has to speak more about, bringing people together and all of the things that the Bible teaches us to do, and that he's got to start talking about that, not every day, not every minute, but he's got to start injecting that into his daily routine somehow, and he will, and promote people that are out there preaching the good Lord and preaching the gospel and so on. One of the things I was surprised about, and I may have missed it, I didn't think Franklin Graham was there, and I was a little bit...
He did not speak if he was there.
Yeah, okay. I was surprised at that. I thought maybe they would have had him, but I know they had his personal spiritual advisor there to speak and so on, and that's fine. That's who you want, but I was a little bit surprised that he wasn't at least able to say a few words.
They had 25 speakers, and it went better than 4 hours.
Yes.
Okay, because not everybody. You could see some of them were well within their time frame. Susie Wiles, who never speaks, was one of them.
Right.
It was astonishing to see her there, but and there were so many people. And one thing that I did not see was usually in a thing like that, they'll take individual shots of people in the crowd. Okay, and like you say, Glenn Beck was as well known as he is. He did not get a premier seat.
Nope.
And so, but President Trump said his entire cabinet was there. Many senators were there. Many Congress people were there. He says, I couldn't introduce them because they're all scattered throughout this.
Right.
And when you saw it, there was not an open seat.
No, I mean, it was, and there were people that were sitting behind the stage that I assumed they had a jumbotron over here somewhere because there was no way they could see the speakers. They were behind the stage, if you will, and it was covered up. So, yeah, it was just an amazing thing, and it came together within a matter of a week. Okay, it came together in a matter of a week.
They call that a miracle. They call it a miracle.
That people that drove for hours and hours and hours. Some people got there the day before. Some people got there at like 3 or 4 in the morning. And Glenn Beck said he got there at like 8:30, and that's when he was in that long line of traffic.
No, that's late.
Well, they had, for people that were sitting on the ground floor level, okay, had a separate entrance, if you will, for their car to drive in than the general public. So there was a little difference there, and he was able to get in and so on. Yes, but you're right. Just because you may have a big name and a public factor didn't mean that you were going to be part of the show yesterday.
It was a great tribute to a young man who sadly only lived 3 decades, 31 years on this earth, and he did more in his 31 years than some people will do in a lifetime.
Oh, heavens, yes.
He was a brilliant young man.
Yes.
And so now the question is, what do we do next? And the answer is, we put our hand to the plow. We put our hand to work. We start to do what Charlie would do. Try to talk to those who do not agree with us. Try to talk to them in love. Plant the seeds. Some of us plant, some of us water, some of us harvest. I think that the fields are ripe for harvest, but the laborers are few. I think that we now need to be laborers to help bring this harvest in and to bring people back to our roots. And now is the time. Now is the time.
It would be good, and maybe somebody in their organization is planning this. It would be good if they could take a compilation, if you will, of the performances and speeches and that he gave, the college shows that he did, and so on.
Charlie Kirk, you mean?
Put that together in some form of a DVD or whatever that people would be able to re-look and re-hear some of the things that he said.
I think that's coming.
Yeah,
I think that's coming, and
Lord knows there's a lot of ads out there for TV or T-shirts and hats. Oh my gosh!
Oh, they're trying to make money on memorabilia.
Oh yes.
And I think more important than the memorabilia is the memory, and is the idea of trying to do what. And really quickly, I do want to say that I was really glad his pastor, Rob McCoy, was the first speaker that came up, and he did an altar call. He did an altar call for people who were not saved, and had them stand up. And he said, "Now, if you're saved, sit down." And all the people who are saved, sit down. And the people who are not saved stood up. He said, "Now, I want all you people right there, begin to disciple them." And it's our time now to begin discipling. To begin spreading the word. Again, Tuesday night, if you're listening to this on Tuesday, the Tea Party night, we're going to have an open house. John and I are going to do a broadcast live, a podcast live. You want to come and see that, and we'll get you some materials. If you don't feel you know enough, we'll have you get to know more. You've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, recorded at the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. If you have thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for our program, just drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com or put them in the comments below. Check out the YouTube page here daily. be putting up regular programming on a regular basis. And subscribe to our YouTube page. Join our pages at The Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. It would be very helpful. As we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way, John Larsen and Barry Foster, and we'll see you next time.